As everyone knows by now, there's been hinting towards Ben Solo's redemption. Arguably, he is probably one of the most fascinating characters in the sequel trilogy because he's so complex. His motivations are becoming somewhat clear. A lot of people think that Ben Solo is going to become redeemed, or as a lot of people have been calling it, Bendemption, which is pretty catchy. But we've been so overwhelmed with information about Ben Solo lately, and it looks like we are becoming more acquainted with him. So with that in mind, I think a lot of people are hinting towards Bendemption. I thought I would cover it, so you're welcome. We're going to start out with The Force Awakens. So not even when the action first starts in The Force Awakens, we start out with the title crawl. That's our first hint towards this redemption. In the scroll, it says, "The sinister First Order has risen from the ashes of the Empire and will not rest until Skywalker, the last Jedi, has been destroyed." So first looking at that, whenever we first watched it in the theater, it could be referring to Luke Skywalker at the, like they said his name at the beginning of the paragraph. But after watching The Last Jedi and seeing some hints towards Bendemption, it could be hinting towards Ben Solo. Ben Solo is part of the Skywalker family, so it could mean him. Arguably, he was a Jedi before he became Kylo Ren, so therefore he has some parts at war with him. It could mean that if the last bit of the Jedi within Ben Solo is not destroyed, then he will rise, which the Rise of Skywalker does. So when we first see Ben Solo, he's as Kylo Ren coming down onto Jakku where the villagers are at. And we hear first his theme. In some parts of the theme, it feels like it's an uncertain end to his theme. It's almost reflected in his character that there's uncertainty whether or not he's completely dark side or he's completely light, which we see or we hear that Laura Santeca says that he was not originated from the dark side, he was originated from the light. His theme definitely comes into play, which we hear at the end of the Rise of Skywalker trailer. It has the Kylo Ren theme, but it has a triumphant end. So that is another clue. There is a scene where Ben finds out that Finn took the droid and they stole a freighter, and he of course probably knows it is his dad's freighter. And then he is told that they were accompanied by a girl, and he asks, "What girl?" And then the scene is match cut with Rey, her arm going out as well, and she says it's the motivator. This could mean nothing, but it absolutely does mean everything. So it's an answer to what girl. It's the motivator. She's the motivator to Ben's story, because that scene of Rey and Finn in the Millennium Falcon was cut up, so that scene of Ben was in the middle. That is definitely a hint towards his redemption, of Rey becoming a catalyst to his redemption. Okay, in the first meeting scene between Snoke, Ben, and Hux, Snoke says that the droid returns to Resistance, leading them to the Last Jedi. If Skywalker returns, the new Jedi will arise. That is a very powerful line, because it, just like the beginning scroll, it could mean two things. It could mean that it's Luke Skywalker, if he returns, the new Jedi will rise. Simple as like just surface level. But this line is definitely has double meaning to it. It could also mean that Skywalker, meaning Ben Solo, who is part of the Skywalker lineage, if he rises, if he returns, if his light side comes back, the new Jedi will rise. And the next scene that Ben is in, he is speaking to his grandfather's charred, ashed helmet. In this scene, I think that he's trying to speak to Vader, and if you see in the early concepts of The Force Awakens, you see that they did mock up Anakin Skywalker as a Force Ghost, and his Force Ghost was like half and half. It was half Anakin, half Vader. I think that he's trying to pull the Vader side. He's not speaking to the Anakin side. He asked for his grandfather, Darth Vader, to show him the darkness because he feels the pull to the light, which is an interesting thing to say in Star Wars, because usually these Skywalker men are pulled to the dark. It reveals that he's a very conflicted person. He's not just a villain in the story. It shows that he's one of the protagonists in this trilogy. It shows that he is very complex and he has so much depth to his character that he's trying to fight off the light, but the light keeps pulling to him. And there is something that is said later in this movie that I'll come to when I do, that is connected to this line in a very interesting way. So Ben also says that he will finish what Vader started. So does this mean that he'll finish what Darth Vader started? Or does it mean that he will finish what Anakin Skywalker started? I don't think until we get the third movie, we will know completely what it actually means. Okay, so here's the point where the line, the pull towards the light, kind of connects, and it also connects later on into the film as well. But when this is not a scene with Ben, but when Rey touches the lightsaber, mask comes down, and she says, the light, it guides you. So it really puts things into perspective when it is the light that is guiding her, but it's also the light that is pulling Ben. So it wants them two together for some reason. Okay, so afterwards, Ben comes down to Tokodana, and tries to find the droid, but instead finds Rey. And as you see in this entire sequence of him going to Rey, he is not on the offense whatsoever. He does use his force powers to stop her from shooting at him. He does kind of scare her with his lightsaber, but he never does like swing at her or try and like whatever. He could fire back, like, you know, he could swing his lightsaber to fire back those blaster shots back towards her, but he didn't. And there's a reason why, is because the light is drawing them together. He also bridal carries her into the ship, which is interesting because that's not what you do with a prisoner. So we already see Ben softening up. We already see the Kylo Ren exterior kind of go down a little bit just for Rey. This is also a very super romantic carry, and there is a difference between carrying someone who's a victim and carrying someone who is a romantic interest. I'm not saying that Reylo is going to happen, but it might happen. It might just a little bit happen. It definitely will happen. We see Rey, and she's held captive, but she's not bloody or beaten or broken like Poe is. But she is there, and Ben's position in sitting down, crouching down, is very telling because you wouldn't do that with a prisoner. He's kind of watching her as if he's fascinated by her, and he speaks to her in a very calm tone. But when Ben removes his mask, it's very much a shock to Rey because she's expecting someone who is like ugly and evil and all that, but he's not. He looks like a prince. It's also a shock to the audience because it's the first time we see him without his mask. So seeing him like that, it's like, oh, it's a really gorgeous guy. But you'll see in this interrogation scene, a lot of the times the camera is focusing on him. As he's saying the words, you're alone, you imagine an island, you know, he's saying all these things as he's reading her mind. It's almost as if he's saying that for himself. There's a lot of little things that do kind of support Ben becoming redeemed. They don't seem like it on the surface level, but as you go on, as you read material that Lucasfilm has come out with and Disney has come out with, or watch the next movie, it really is telling, such as when Leia wants Han to bring her son home, when Poe tells the rest of his squadron that as long as there's light, they still have a chance. Like, there's those little things that are very deep, like they have a deeper meaning within the story, and I think they are very supportive of Ben's journey. Now, Ben and Han's first meeting after so many odd years is heart-wrenching, but Han tries to persuade his son and come home and saying it's not too late, and then the walls of Kylo Ren come down and Ben is there, and he says, and he's just has so many emotions going through them, saying he's being torn apart. The man in him is just like crumbling to that little child of being scared, and his dad is there, and that's just, it's sad and gut-wrenching. Also, when you think about he ran to someone who is now abusing him, and he wants his way out, but he doesn't know if he can do it. Also, I missed this, but Han says, what do you take off that mask, and Ben says, what do you think you'll see if you do? And Han says, the face of my son, and then Ben takes his mask off, and he says, your son is gone, he was weak and foolish like his father. That is an interesting way to say things, because if you remember in Return of the Jedi, Luke comes in and he says, I know the truth that you were once Anakin Skywalker, my father, and then Darth Vader turns to him and says, that name no longer has meaning to me. Those two scenes are mirror images, and George Lucas said that these movies rhyme, they're poetry. I'm not saying that it's happening, but Ben Solo is going to be redeemed. We go down to the fight, and after he strikes down Finn, which, by the way, as he's fighting Finn, it's very aggressive and offensive. He's striking at him, he's burning him with the crossguard of his lightsaber. We then see Ben reaching for the lightsaber, and it flies past him to Rey. He is looking at Rey with wonder and, in awe. Like, why is this lightsaber calling to her? But if we remember, Ben saying, the light is pulling me, and then Maz telling Rey, the light, it guides you, the lightsaber. it's guiding them too. I've heard a lot of people relay the symbolism of this lightsaber as Ben's soul and how it is going towards Rey. That's also really good symbolism for this, so you could take that as well. I think that's a perfect analogy. So their entire fight, Ben is not on the offense, he is on the defense. There's some times where he's like parlaying just like to swing, and it's not aggressive, it's not harsh, he's not doing it to try and kill her, he's doing it because he's trying to keep up. Then we get to the end of the fight and Ben looks at her and says, "You need a teacher. I can teach you the ways of the Force." He does not say, "I can teach you the ways of the dark side." His choice of wording is very specific. I think by the end of this movie, Ben is slowly getting closer to the light. There's definitely evidence of that. I think there's so much to be explored with these characters, especially with Ben and how he completes his road to redemption. I think there's so much more to be found in The Last Jedi. I think there is definitely some little parts that I want to kind of pick out with past films that kind of hint at some redemption as well. If you guys like this video, like it please, it's free, it's great. Subscribe if you want to see more videos from me, and make sure you follow me on my socials, which are down below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!